Hello, I'm Brian Hutchinson. I'm your instructor for the online class, and we are going to start our first project with Papercrafts here. So this is one of my favorite lessons to do collaboratively or to do as a literature-inspired lesson plan for elementary students. Typically, I go through Dr. Seuss texts with them. We talk about the architecture and the really inventive and interesting, surreal types of structures that he draws. And I ask students questions about how they can describe how these structures are similar or different from structures that are more typical and industrial or just housing type structures. And so then I challenge them to create their own Suessian architectural sculpture. So paper is nice and cheap. It's a great way to use supplies at the elementary level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through several different ways that we can take something flat, like a piece of paper like this, and create a three-dimensional version of that. So we're going from flat to form. And so that's another artistic element of vocabulary that I like to bring into this. So I usually give kids a lot of different colors of construction paper to allow them to decorate it however they want. I usually let them use markers, add all kinds of different things to that. But what I do is I usually start with a platform. Everybody gets the same platform, whether they're working in groups, independently. I typically give a time limit for this project. It should go pretty quickly. Papercrafts are typically, can be a fast media to work with. So first thing I want to do is talk about curvilinear shapes, right? So the cylinder is a really easy way to create structural dimension. And so I usually demonstrate all these different things to the students. I tell them they can use as many as they want. So what I do is I just fold it up, curl it on itself like this. So I like Elmer's glue, but you can use the white glue or you can use the glue stick if you would like. But what I like about the white glue is it's strong and it dries pretty quickly. So typically what I'll do is I'll put a small amount of glue. And I usually tell my students that they need to dot it on there because it dries quicker. Students use a lot of glue, it's not going to dry very quickly at all. So what I do then is I roll that on itself, and then the trick here really is just to hold it long enough that it can hold itself without using any adhesives beside the glue that you've added to that. Typically, if you hold it together for a little while, that glue is going to soak into the paper, the fibers become enmeshed. Works out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and set that one aside. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll make different size cylinders, set them aside, and then I start the construction process. So okay, overlap this a little bit too much, so I'm going to have to put it off to the side like this. I think I'll just stick something inside there so that it holds it down really well. We'll stick this Sharpie in there. Okay, so cylinder there, right? Next thing we'll talk about, I suppose, is more curvilinear. So this is more of a decorative technique, but I like to show students how to develop a spiral. They typically like this pretty well. So ribbons or thinner pieces of paper seem to work best for this. So I emphasize to the students that they should try different thicknesses. So I'm cutting some thin, some thick. And the goal here is to, again, take this from flat to form. So a typical thing that people will do is either they'll take a pencil, a pair of scissors, or the edge of some kind of a table or something, and then essentially you put your thumb on that, on the outside of it, or you can rub it back and forth, something like that. You pull this pretty rapidly. You gotta be kind of careful with construction paper. It has a tendency to want to like rip and stuff. But the more that you pull on that, the more spirally business you're going to get out of that. Very similar to like the truffula trees that you will see in some of Dr. Seuss's architecture. So the kids really get into this one. Sometimes I like to do a twist spiral like this. That's a little bit more difficult to get it to hold, but I'll show that in just a second. I'm going to make one more of these spirals, and I'm going to use the table this time. So what I do for that typically is I put it on the edge and then I put my thumb on it and I just basically pull straight down. It's gonna be a little bit more relaxed in terms of a spiral. Still gonna look pretty cool though, I think. So I'm gonna, again, set that aside. So for the twist, what I'm going to do is take this flat, and I just wanna twist it like that, right? Usually what I'll do is I'll make some tabs by folding it on the end, because I actually have to have this adhered down to something before it will hold that twist. So I'm gonna go ahead and use glue stick for this one, just because I know I don't wanna have to wait for it to dry. So I'll stick that down. And I usually give students the option of using tape as well. I like clear tape better so that you can see all the color. I have masking tape today because that's what I grabbed, I guess. So if you think it's gonna move on you, then you can tape it down a little bit, keep it from going anywhere. And then perhaps paint that later, maybe add marker to it. So the goal here is to get a good twist. And so, let's see, I think I'll just go ahead and, yeah, I want to get some good volume off of that. So when I think I have what I want there, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up, and I'm going to put just a little glue on there, a couple of little dots. And again, hold that down just long enough until it dries. And if you think that you need to put a piece of tape on it, sometimes that's a good idea. You can see that mine's flipping up on me right now. It's just uncurled. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that again. And we'll go with that right there. I'll stick the tape down there. Again, if you're doing this, it's gonna look a lot better with clear tape. So I'm starting to get a little bit of dimension coming off of this now. So, all right, next up. Let's try a different color. And let's go for, now that we have these curvilinear shapes, let's go for some more rectilinear shapes. So things that are like rectangles, squares. This is a good geometry connection for kids. You could be talking about different shapes and how they relate to form in 3-dimension. So to make a box out of this, or to make some kind of like a rectangular tower, what you would need to do is basically fold this piece of paper. And usually what I do is I fold it such that I would have enough room to fold it 2 more times so that I have 4 sides. So I fold it over just a little bit like that. I'm gonna roll that back over and fold it again. So what I have then is a situation where part of the structure is beginning to come out, right? I'm gonna fold that back up, and I just roll this over 1 more time. So then when I unfold all of that, I've got a structure that I can put together, right? And notice I have a little bit extra construction paper out here, and that's gonna help me adhere that to this side, make it a lot stronger, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and fold that as though it were a tab. I usually give kids a lot of construction paper. That way if they mess something up, you know, they can throw it into a collage bin or something like that. All right, so this would be a rectilinear structure. And so I'm just gonna glue it along this seam here, set it aside. So of course, if you wanted to make a box, like an enclosed structure for this, we could fold a top to it and glue it on top. Or we could make like a roof type structure out of it, very similar again to Dr. Suess's architectural structures that he draws. And I'll give a list of some good books that you can go through with the kids. It's a great motivator. So again, I'll set that aside. So I've got a couple of structures that I can work with here. Looks like my cylinder's about ready as well. So I've got my ribbons here. Let's see, let's go for some lime green. What do I want to try now? Let's see, I'll go for some stairs. So a lot of Dr. Suess's structures have stairs involved in them. I used to do a project with my students with this Papercrafts unit where they got to design their own roller coasters and things like that. So they got to imagine what it would be like if this were a theme park. You really have to engage kids' imagination. Art projects, school in general, really, you have to work hard to make sure that it's fun for students. You have to keep them engaged. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this again into a form. So I'm gonna begin with the stair idea. What I do is just a zigzag fold. So I fold over a little bit there, right? And then I'm just going to flip it over, reverse the fold, so that I have a zigzag going on like that. I'll flip it over again, reverse the fold. I'm trying to keep it the same, width here so that it really actually does look like stairs. For this, you may have to put some little support structures underneath. But I think what I'm going to do is put some stairs going up to this tower. We'll see how it goes. And again, I encourage students when they're thinking about shape to form translation, again, art vocabulary, shape is two-dimensional, whereas form has that three-dimensional aspect. I encourage them to look at it in space and really decide whether or not, it has the form that they want. So again, I'll set that aside. A lot of my students like to use this as fencing or railing as well. So I'm going to use the rest of this to develop a roof for my house structure. So what I do is I just fold that in half, kind of develop, kind of like a triangular platform here. Pretty big compared with this structure. So what I may do is fold these tabs in like this, right? So that I can shorten it up to some degree. And I just kind of roughly do that on the other side as well. And that may enable me to make something that's a little bit more appropriately sized, right? So I kind of feel like I'd like it to go a little further. So I think what I'll do with that, take a piece of blue paper here, I'm going to lay this down on top. I'm just going to use a Sharpie. Of course, you wouldn't give your students Sharpies. I just figured a Sharpie would be more visible on a video. And I just trace around the shape to make myself a little platform for that. But when I'm working with really young kids, and I talk a lot about Minecraft, I talk a lot about building Legos, and these kids are likely already experimenting with this type of architecture and structure building. Some dots on there. I always had a teacher that I worked with that always said, dot, dot, not a lot. Very elementary style, right? But really it conserves your materials, which is nice, and it makes the project go faster. For some reason, students that are young seem to want to slop that glue all over the place. So really emphasize that for them. And again, it's best if you build all these things first, and then set them aside, let them dry, and then begin the construction process. That way, your stuff's not falling apart as you're trying to build it. So I'm liking that structure pretty well. Okay, so I've got kind of like a prism shape that I can use. All right, let's advance to, what am I going to show now? Let's see. Let's try. Let's try a corner-to-corner shape where we use a triangle to develop a pyramid. So I've got a triangular shape like this. What I can do is take this then and fold it from one corner to another. You see I have a little bit of leftover here, right? So when I unfold that then, and I fold this back over, I can join these and connect them together right here. And so that's going to make a very skinny kind of pyramid type shape. Another way that I could go about doing that would be to use a square. And so I may cut out a square shape here. I teach a unit on platonic solids with high school students involving geometry. And so we talk about using perfect shapes. With little kids, I just demonstrate how to make, a rough square. And so what I typically do is I just take like a rectangular shape and I fold it over until it hits the side. And then this little excess piece I'm going to go ahead and cut off. So then I have a rough square. Okay. So what I have now is just, a square that's been folded in corner to corner like this. Next, what I will do is fold this corner to corner. So what I should have is an X in here, right? And so what I do at that point is I cut along one of these lines right to the middle, and I stop right there. Then I can take these two flaps, I can fold them in on each other. If you're doing this with littler kids, you may want to limit the amount of techniques that you're showing and allow them to do some experimentation. So now I've got a pretty cool little pyramidal structure. All I've got to do is put some glue on here. Some dots up on there. Get that folded over. Hold that for just a bit. And again, we'll set that one aside. I'm going to return to my weird pyramid shape here in just a sec. See if I can do something a little bit more interesting with that. Looks like this kind of construction paper is a little bit cheaper. It doesn't like to hold glue very well, so I may have to put some tape on this one. So I usually give my students a goal with this assignment to make it really, really colorful, to make it interesting to look at, and to build it as high as you can without it falling over. The kids love that challenge. It really gets them engaged. So I'm gonna place this aside, and we'll go back to this weird shape here. That looks more like a sailboat, really. Yeah? I don't know. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and cut this off right here. Work with these two triangular shapes. They're roughly the same, they're not perfect, right? So now what I'll do is I'll fold this in half through the middle. Fold this one in half through the middle as well. And then I can go ahead and put this together as a pyramidal shape as well. So now I can glue these together here, and then I'll have a similar shape. So I'm going to use glue stick on this one. Hopefully it'll hold a little bit better. Well. And so I can attach these two, like if I've got a situation like this, I can put a tab on the inside, add some glue to it. Since I kind of messed up my first pyramid, I hate wasting material, so I always look for ways to try to fix stuff if I mess it up. Go ahead and stick those two together. Worst comes to worst, I'll throw it away and try again, I suppose. Okay, so I've got another pyramidal structure, so that'll be cool to work with. Another awesome one, like for developing trees and things like that, so I'm going to go ahead and use green for this one, is to use the curled ribbon method, but then to cut repeated ribbons on one piece. So I'm going to go ahead and use this piece for that. Sometimes I'll have my students draw lines on here so that they can follow it, maybe with a ruler. Some kids have the physical and manual dexterity to actually be able to do this pretty well. I always have them stop a little short because we're going to use this right here as a tab. So again, I'm going to cut several of these. I'm going to vary their thicknesses. So I got some thin ones, I'll have some thicker ones, some medium thicknesses, that kind of thing. It's important to me as an art educator that my students don't all make the same thing, because that's crafts in my opinion. We don't want to develop a convergent teaching system, meaning that we want to get all of our students to the same right answer. We want to give kids an opportunity to exert their creativity And so a divergent structure is much better. Every student's work should be a little bit different than everybody else's, and it should maybe even reflect some of their personality. And that's a nice break from some of the other expectations that typical public education may have of these kids, right? Okay, so we've got this situation, and we just kind of like to mess with the kids and be like, oh, look at my beard, it's so cool. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just curl these. So I start at the end. I like to get these really curly because they're skinnier. And they'll create some like nice volume, hopefully. And I like to alternate the curls on that. So like, let's see, I'll curl this one this way now. Create a lot more volume and texture. The kids seem to really like this technique quite a bit. Ooh, this one doesn't want to go, it's a little too thick. Flip it over and go the other way. So I just kind of flip it over, pull, flip it over, pull, alternate. And again, encourage them to have fun and get creative. Imagine themselves as tiny little people on this platform. What would they look like? What kind of stuff could they do there? A lot of times my students will develop a narrative like, this is a little pool area and this is a recreation spot. This is where the dogs hang out. Encouraging that concept of play when working with geometry, architecture, the literature aspect. But yeah, pretty rad. You know, if I make some hair, right? So what I would do then is perhaps make a little tree trunk for that. So a cool way to deal with that is to take this tab thing and then to roll it on itself like this so that you have like a little cylinder inside of there, and then you have all this stuff coming off of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just one dot of glue there. I'm gonna roll this up. Hold that really well for just a few seconds. And this is a good thing, like working with partners, having your kids working as partners. So you can have some of them making certain things, you can have some of them holding these things while the others are like cutting, gluing, folding, that kind of thing. When I teach this on campus, I actually have my students pair up and then we make a competition out of it. Like whose is the tallest, whose is the most colorful, that kind of thing. Kids really love competition. Okay, I'm gonna set that aside, make a little tree trunk for that. I think I'll make a pink tree trunk. So I'm gonna make a more narrow cylinder this time. Sometimes this is difficult to do when you're trying to roll or curl a form that's really, really thin like this, or skinnier rather. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll just make a whole bunch of little folds like this. Like I'll make a small fold like this. Hopefully you can see that. I develop another fold. It all goes the same way. Another fold, another fold. That way, it sort of creates like a geometric cylinder, but it makes it stronger. At the bottom, what I do, my scissors good. There they go. I like to cut up the side just a little bit, like this, so that I can pull these out. And then I have something that I can actually glue down to my platform. In this case, I would definitely use some tape. Seems like it's better structure that way. So I'm gonna put a little bit of glue on the edge here just to hold that together, and I'm gonna tape it to keep it from unfurling. I'm gonna begin putting all this together now. I mean, this could be a really super long video because I could keep going. This is a lot of fun, for me at least. But I wanted to show you the basic stuff here in terms of different structures that you can take, that you can make and build out of flat things. So, just putting a little bit of tape on the edges. Again, use clear tape, it would look a lot nicer. This masking tape is really disruptive visually. All right, so I've got kind of a good start to a truffula tree here, which is cool, or whatever you want to call it. You know, again, allow the kids some choice and voice. All right, awesome. So now I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of these things together. I think I want to start with my house type structure. And so what I'll do is I'll add that on the corner perhaps. Yeah. To adhere that down, I guess I didn't think about tabs for that. To adhere that down, what we can do is apply some tape to the sides. And then set it down on your platform and just push that tape down so it's nice and secure. And the kids will experiment hopefully with sturdy structures, like especially if they want to build a tall structure. So then I might be able to place this on top. Again, thinking about environment a little bit. I'm just going to use 2 pieces of tape on this one. I will put tape on this side, sticking up, tape on this side, sticking up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that down. This is like some dexterity stuff here. And then I'm just going to use my thumbs, 4 fingers to kind of gently ease that on, as it were. Looks good. Awesome. Okay, let's look at these stairs. It could be kind of nice to like develop these stairs up here like this, but I'm seeing that this maybe ends here in a weird way to where it might be difficult for me to attach that. And so I think what I'm going to do is actually just cut this piece off so I can stick this on there. So I have a good place to glue that. And again, I'm just going to put some tape on here to hold it while that glue's drying. Sometimes you could turn this into a 2-day project too, where the kids can come back and paint it, make little creatures, whatever. There we go. We'll go ahead and add a little bit of glue to the bottom. And we'll stick that down. Actually, look, it looks like it's going to hold pretty well. I don't think I need that tape. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my cylinder structure over here. I like to talk about balance with sculpture too. I don't want to group everything up in the same area. I want to make sure that I have different things in different areas so that it's well balanced. And again, I would just tape this down on the side. I think I might make a cone for this one. That could be kind of cool. For the top. I'll add my spirals on the outside of this, just to make it interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that around so you can see it better. That on there. Flip this around. Sometimes I like to encourage the kids to connect stuff together too, just so it's more interesting and interconnected. Really want to engage students' imaginations with this project, and with any art project, really. That looks pretty nice. I like that. All right, so I'm going to do a real quick, actually, this might look pretty awesome. I don't know how I feel about that. I'll do a cone really quickly. So the easiest way to do a cone, or to make a cone shape, is to cut a circle out. So you could have your students trace a circle out, or you could have them pre-cut into circles. I'm just going to do my best to cut this into a circular shape. Then what I usually do is I have the students fold it in half. Again, we could talk about things like diameter, radius, right? Then I fold it in half the other way, joining these up corner to corner here. And the reason that I want to do that is so that I can find the center of this circle, because that's a pretty important thing to make your cone. Hopefully you can see that, I don't know. I tried to make like a really, really dark mark on there. So then I just follow one of these lines to the center and I cut that nice and straight. What that enables me to do then is to take this structure and fold it up on itself like this, and I can make whatever shape cone I want for that. So right now I'm liking that pretty well. So to kind of go through that again, right? Got this, I would fold or overlap one over the other like this. I'm just gonna open this up. I'm gonna add some glue here. Be a good craftsmanship element to teach for the kids. I'm gonna put some tape on this one just to make sure it holds. Then as far as getting this structure on here, sometimes that's a little bit tricky because we've got this surface here that really doesn't want to like stick down to this surface. A couple of different things that you could do with that is you could maybe glue a piece of, or cut a piece of paper that goes across the top, or you could take this and trace around it. And I can develop like a more solid form, so I actually have something to adhere that to. Let me get rid of my scraps real quick. It looks like my surface is getting a little messy. Okay. Cool. So to get this maybe stuck on here like this, what I will do, again, using clear tape is going to look a lot nicer. I'm just going to apply some tape around this circle here. And then what I would do is place this on top, and then I fold that tape onto the cone on top of it, like so. Looks like maybe I need another one here. So usually when I do this demonstration for students, I have these things pre-made. What I do is I show them how to make these things, right? And then I have them already pre-made. It's kind of like a cooking show style thing, is what I always say. And then I do another demonstration, and I show how to construct all of this stuff. So it's not like a 35-minute demonstration. Your kids are not going to want to sit through that, right? So to get this on here, we can do like we did with this, where we just put some tape on the sides. And then we'll lay this on top and smooth that tape up. Cool. Now we're getting there. Okay, last couple of things that I'm going to do here is add my tree maybe on the corner here. Yeah, I like that pretty well. Looks good to me. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and place this inside here like this and tape it together. But I like the whole use of two different collars for this tree. And then for structure's sake, I may want to add a little bit more. But I'm going to go ahead and use my tabs to get that on my platform. So I'll put some glue on each one of these tabs. And they'll put it next to my house. So like right here. That looks like it's leaning into the house, right? So to hold that down in the meantime, again, I'm going to go ahead and just put some tape on the bottom. Now I just use a piece of construction paper for the base, but if you're really wanting to build a nice tall structure, you may want to give the kids just cut out pieces of cardboard so it's a little bit stronger. They can paint the cardboard so it doesn't look like, well, cardboard. But again, if you're just gonna go for something a little bit more simple like this, perhaps, you know, just use a black piece of construction paper or some kind of neutral color. Looks like I have my pyramid still. I'm just gonna stick that puppy in here, call it good. Kind of like a little, I don't know, jungle gym or something. So, while we get him to stay, I think I will apply some tape to the side, get that down, so on and so forth. One more piece of tape and I think I'm finished. All right, so you want to watch this video and pay special attention to the demonstration of the construction of the different structures. You may have to go back through and watch it a few times. And then what I want you to do is I want you to build your own. And when it's completed, you'll make a video on Flipgrid, a little 2-minute video showing what you did, explaining how you did it, and we'll go through a little bit of a self-critique process. So I'll have more videos on that later. So here's my kind of cool structure. Oh, it's falling over. I'm gonna leave it on the table. All right, so we're gonna call that good. Now it's time to clean up and be proud of our successes.